Another thing that I would like to bring up is something that I never even noticed in my 30 plus years of being a Twin Peaks fan, but it was something that you brought up the other night. And not that I doubted you, but I wanted to just see it for myself. And there it was.
Hmm.
Ronette's mom is named Maria in the pilot, even though we never see her in the pilot. And then her name is changed to Suburbus Pulaski in episode 1, now played by a different actress.
That's
Now,
correct.
can you shed some light on how did this all happen?
Okay. So basically, when we get to the role of Ronette's parents, in the script, as to why David Lynch and Mark Frost made the decision to change the name from Maria to Suburbus, that's unknown because my initial thought would be that there was basically when you're doing a film, there's a thing that happens a lot where before the film gets distribution, a lot of times you have to clear every name. So basically, any name that's in there has to go to a certain type of law office where they clear it to make sure it's not infringing upon anybody's rights. For instance, if there had been a real girl somewhere in a small town, a small logging town, who was murdered named Laura Palmer, then they might have to have had changed. They might have had to have changed the name because it could infringe, and it could be taken as a real person. So names have to be cleared. And originally that would have been my thought, but the name was cleared because the name Maria Pulaski appears in the credits of the pilot. Now, in the pilot, Maria Pulaski is credited being played by Roberta McGuire, and Yannick Pulaski, that name stayed the same, was credited as Rick Tudor, who was a local Seattle actor. They were both local Seattle actors, Roberta McGuire and Rick Tudor. So there was a scene, and it's in the script, and it was shot, but it got cut out. And unfortunately, it's not on the deleted scenes on the Blu-ray. Hopefully, someday it'll see the light of day. And the script is before Cooper and Truman walk in to see Ronette, when Cooper says, I'd like to examine her fingers. And, Dr. Shelby says this girl doesn't even know if she is or where she is or if she is. Right before that, Cooper and Truman walk down the hallway, and there sitting in the hallway is Yannick and at that point, Maria Pulaski. And they're kind of in tears and really broken up. And they pass them in the hall. And that scene was in the script, and that scene was shot. Now, my bet is that the credits were put in that scene probably while it was still being edited, and that scene got cut out later. So the credits remain on the scene. You'll also notice that there's a Frank Roberts who's playing the father, the priest in the pilot. That also got cut out, but he's still credited at the end as Frank Roberts being the actor. And that's another case of that from the pilot. So my bet is that scene was filmed that was cut, and then when they wrote episode 1, for some reason they decided to change the name from Maria to Suburbus, and that's probably a reason that's only known to David Lynch and Mark Frost as to the why. But it happened, and
but
then because the pilot was
Suburbus,
shot in Snoqualmie and episode 1 was shot in L.A.,
right?
my bet is they didn't want to fly up. Well, they didn't need to. Well, Rick Tudor still appears. Yannick Pulaski's still in the pilot in the scene where we see him getting into the police car, that kind of overhead shot. That's his only scene. But you can't really see his face that clearly. So rather than fly out that actor and the actress that played Maria Pulaski all the way to L.A., it probably made more sense to cast 2 local actors, which were Alan Ogle and Michelle Milantoni, who ended up playing Yannick and Suburbus Pulaski in episode 1. So as to the name change, I'm not sure why, but it's the cast changes. That would be the reason.
Right. But I mean, to go from Maria to, I've never heard this name before, Suburbus.
I've never heard it before either.
I asked, I tweeted it out to Mark Frost. I didn't hear anything back. But,
hopefully he'll get back. I'd love to know the answer. I'm real curious because Mark Frost would know.
Yeah, but that is a drastic change. That's not.
Yeah.
It's almost like we want to get so far away from Maria.
Yeah.
Since we're kind of on this topic, having to deal with the Pulaskis, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you know. Why is Ronette missing from the bulk of season 2 until the finale? Is it just because they wanted to get so far away from the Laura Palmer murder mystery that they just decided to kind of, the last time we see Ronette is when she's screaming from the letter under her fingernail, right? And then she shows up with a shorter haircut in the finale.
Yeah.
Was that just a conscious decision to keep it away from the Laura Palmer mystery, or was Phoebe Augustine busy during that time? Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I don't think it was what I believe it was, and I can't say this for a fact, but I don't think that it has to do with Phoebe's schedule. I think it has to do with the fact that they had moved on from the Laura Palmer story, and at that point, after that, David Lynch, obviously, we all know he stepped away after the Laura Palmer storyline was wrapped up for a little bit. I
Not
think
to
at
make
that,
not to make Wild at Heart.
not to make Wild at Heart. No, Wild at Heart had been released, not only filmed during, before and during season one. It started filming before season one and continued during. Not only that, it was released between the first and second season. So no, it was not to make Wild at Heart, but he'd stepped away. And during that time, the network started to inflict what they wanted. And one of the network things that they said was that they wanted story arcs that would wrap up in 3 to 4 episodes and not these long story arcs. That was one thing they wanted. And that's why we get these things like the Little Nicky and the Evelyn Marsh that wrap up, just within a few episodes. That
Right.
was what the network wanted it to become. They wanted to turn Twin Peaks into what they normally had, or get it
CW
closer to that.
CW did the same thing with Veronica Mars season 3. They said enough of this season long arc. Let's just go to like mysteries that can be solved in 3 to 4 episodes.
Yeah. And that's exactly what they wanted to do. So my bet is, because David Lynch had kind of stepped away and he was the one that would have resisted that completely, that's kind of what happened. And Ronette Pulaski and bringing back that doesn't quite fit into that arc. But when David Lynch came back, you know, big time, which is really those final, starting with the Josie and the Knob and then the final 6 episodes, um, he started bringing back things. And especially in that last one he directed, he really started bringing back the things he loved. So he wanted to get Ronette back in there and really kind of bring it back home to where it started. And I think that's kind of what happened. And I bet you that if there had been a season 3 at that time and David Lynch had been very involved in it, I bet you anything we would have seen more of Ronette.
Because one thing I don't understand is I get that ABC wanted a kind of wrap up to the Laura mystery, but why not just show us who the killer is? And we get Leland with Bob and all that. But why not just continue the show with our knowledge of who the killer is?
Yeah.
Because then he could have gone after Ronette. We could have had a few episodes of him stalking Donna. There could have been a little bit more cat and mouse with the sheriff's department and Leland. I think they could have easily stretched it out for 5 or 6 episodes, and then maybe bring in the Wyndham Earle story in the midst of that, and then nobody would be complaining about this midsection of season 2.
I think that would have been great. And then, Leland's death, and then, just have Leland's death scene occur near the end of season 2 instead. And I would have loved to have seen more of the cat and mouse with Leland and Cooper. And that would have been, because all the stuff we get is really good with that. And I think it would have been great to have seen more of it. I would have been all for that. And then to have Cooper trying to figure out who killed Laura Palmer, still, the audience knows, but he doesn't. At the same time, we got Wyndham Earle in town. It could have been really a double threat. And, who knows what if, Wyndham Earle would have crossed paths with Leland Palmer. How would that have played out,
Or what if Wyndham Earle had not taken Leo Johnson hostage, but Leland Palmer, so he had Bob.
Oh. That would have been interesting.
I agree.